Welcome to the Strong Enough podcast, where we talk about the challenges and celebrate the triumphs of people just like you. I'm your host, Claudia. Today we have two return guests, and we are going to talk about stolen valor. We're going to tell you what it is and what you can do if you suspect it. Please help me welcome Herrera and Jenn DeBeers. Eric and Jenn, I am so stoked to have you guys back today, and I want to say that you guys are my first repeat guests, duo guests in different locations. So thank you for being here from various parts of the country. How are you both doing today?
Doing very well.
Doing pretty good.
Yeah, we're gonna have to pull it out of Eric today sometimes. He's a tough nut to crack, but that's why we love him. So you guys both know what we're going to talk about today, and it's something that I think we're all aware of, but we don't realize how prevalent it actually is, and that is stolen valor. Eric, do you want to give just a quick definition of what that is?
Stolen valor is impersonating a military member. Could be enlisted, it could be officer. Also, it's now going into police and fire department too as well now.
That's insane. And Eric, since I just jumped right in, why don't you tell everybody how you know that and what your background is?
I served in the military from 2005 to 2010. I was in the Army, did 2 tours in Iraq, stationed in Germany, and I've come across a few of some impersonators as well, but most of the time they're easy to pick out, and it's always a laugh to see them stumble.
Well, that's why we have you here today, because Jenn and I, have heard some stories, and weirdly enough, the stories that we've heard are very similar from two entirely different people. So we're going to talk about that, and we're going to have you kind of pick it apart and tell us what we could have picked up on. Jenn, you're down there being all quiet. For those people who did not see your recent episode, tell them a little bit about yourself.
Okay. So I know Claudia. We actually lived in North Carolina together. We were in the event industry. I'm still in the event industry. I'm in the production aspect of things now. And my background is fitness. I went to school for sports med, and my family is pretty much every single man in my family has been in the military. So I have a very strong connection to the military. My brother served in the Air Force. My grandfather was in the Navy. My only boy cousin was in the Navy. My father was Army and Marines. Well, he was Marines. Then he moved over to the Army, and my mom's first husband was a Marine. So we have a lot of military around here. So, and I've dated a lot of military.
Actual military, let's clarify.
Yeah,
actual.
yes. Well, fake and actual, apparently.
So now that we've gotten that out there, let's just hop right in. So when Jenn was here last, part of the story that she told about an ex-boyfriend, or a person that she dated, I guess we could say, was stories that he told about his military career. So Jenn, why don't you just hit some of the high points of that alleged career that we discovered was entirely fake?
Yes. So it was, he said he enlisted right before 9/11 happened. He said he was in basic training when 9/11 happened. And then he was stationed in Korea for a year. And he did 4 tours. He said 2 in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan, and was medically discharged because he got shot in the back. One of his friends died in his arms, and he was rushed to a hospital, and they didn't think he was going to walk again. And then he was medically discharged, and that's where he is now, back in Florida. And said that he told me he was in for 8 years, which was kind of another red flag to me with the whole 4 tours thing. And then the 1 year in Korea. My brother was stationed actually in Korea, so I do know that being stationed over there for a year. But yeah, that just kind of a lot of the things just didn't add up, like timeline wise, and how the extent that he'd been in, and then the fact that he didn't have any scars. That was a telltale. I was like, wait a second, you got there's no bullet wounds, there's no shrapnel. Like, where'd you get hurt? Where'd you get shot?
You have the best healed skin ever.
Right? Like, whatever happened there, like that needs to be mass marketed at this point, because you can make a killing.
Right. So Eric, I see you giggling over there. I would love to hear, just on the brief bit that Jenn just shared with us, what did you pick up on initially that was like, I don't know about this story?
Korea, it's not 1 year, it's 2 years that you have to be, and then you either PCS, or which means go to a different unit or a different duty station, or you choose to stay there, or re-enlist. Yeah, Korea is not they're not going to waste money for you to be there for 1 year.
Yeah.
And when you said 4 tours, I'm like, okay, maybe that is reasonable depending on how long he's been, but being in 8 years, it would have to be a really demanding job for you to be there for 4 times in 8 years. So it all depends on the job.
He wasn't very clear about exactly his job. Like, so my brother was Air Force. He was a linguist and in intelligence. And he learned Korean. That was his language that they taught him at the language school in Monterey, California, which I know all 4 branches use that school as a language school as well. It was originally an Army base, but I do know that from that aspect of things. And so my brother did the same thing. He did 1 year in Korea, and then he agreed to go to Hawaii, and then had to re-enlist in order to stay. Otherwise, they were sending him back to Korea. So that part I completely understand.
Mm-hmm.
Something that I thought was interesting too, Jenn, that you said was about his friend that died in his arms. And I'm not saying that's a red flag, but I know the last time that we talked, we were kind of laughing about the similarities in a lot of what this person told you and what a relative of mine had told what became his wife, now his ex-wife, and all of her family and friends and kind of everybody that he associated with. So he, for Eric's benefit, some of his story was that he had gone to Afghanistan, and I think he said he did 2 tours. He was shot also and had shrapnel in his chest, which again, he had no scars though. And he was shot and stabbed in the neck, shot, I think also in the neck, and one of his friends died in his arms. So I find it very interesting that the people that do this, it seems, pick very emotional stories to tell. And it seems to me that if you actually went through that, it's probably not something that you're going to talk about pretty easily. What do you think, Eric?
Yeah, stab in the neck, shot in the neck. Yeah, there'd be some scars. I know a couple of people that I've served with that she either shot in the head or something, and there's, even if it's just like a graze wound, there's something there. But yeah, telling story right away, never. It took me almost 10 years just to say what I went through, and no, it's something that just sits with you and you really don't want to say anything. That's another one of the points that I'm bringing up. Soldiers really don't talk about themselves. It's more of a we type of thing. And it's just, yeah, just that selflessness is part of what soldiers are.
I love that you said that. And I think Jenn and I had the exact same expressions on our faces. That's not something that I ever would have thought of. But as I'm thinking through the stories that I heard from my relative, I'm going to call him Nelson. That's not his name. It's a name somebody made up for him. So Nelson was very I in his stories. So Jenn, did you find that as well from your Nelson also?
Yeah, I 100% agree. It was always I did this, I did that, I won this. That was another thing. I guess I forgot to say that he had won awards and medals for, fighting and doing the good thing over, in his many tours that he claims that he did. And it was never like a we thing, like we got ambushed and my team this, or so that's interesting, because like I never thought about it that way, but every other soldier, legitimate soldier I've talked to, has that we mentality. So that makes sense.
It totally does. And so we've already, in just a few minutes here, Eric has already given us some great tips on how to spot what could be a stolen valor story, or, a flat out lie, if that's what we're going to call it, because that's what it is. Not talking about it right away and using I versus we. Something else that Nelson would do a lot of was, it was really his entire being, apparently. Now, again, he did not tell us these lies because we would have known, we knew they were lies, but everybody that he interacted with in this new city that he moved to, they said it was kind of his entire being and personality. Like that's what they knew him as, was this soldier, this fighter, this combat veteran who had experienced just horrific things and was trying every day to fight through it. Eric, I want to ask you, for somebody that has actually been through these things, what do you think about somebody who literally didn't even make it out of basic training to turn this into their entire existence?
I don't know what some people think of, and I see it a lot, like on things like Dateline, where they say, "Yeah, I was such and such in this career," and then find out that, yeah, they are kind of almost like narcissists and psychopaths, that almost they're the only ones that end up murdering someone. They dig into their past and find out none of this stuff exists. And I don't know what drives some people to do it. I don't know. I just sometimes I can't even fathom if I would even do that. Especially I have family members that are military too. I think if I did something like that, they would kick my ass. But I mean, I don't know. I just think it's a lot of disrespect and a lot of dishonesty and dishonor about the whole thing.
I agree, because, I think we all embellish a little bit in our lives, when we tell a cool story, or we did something at work that was super neat, and we make it just a little bit neater. But Jenn, having so many relatives that actually did serve, how does it feel when you hear about and even experience these people who aren't just embellishing, but they are just flat out lying about, something that is so important to our country and to everybody that lives here?
I mean, to be honest with you, like when I found out, I was pissed. I have such I wouldn't say a soft spot, but I have such a deep respect for law enforcement, for military. I know, like my mom even told me, because like Eric was saying, that they don't talk about it. And I remember when my grandfather was living, like he fought in World War II. He was 17 when Pearl Harbor happened, so he couldn't, obviously wasn't in the military quite yet. But as soon as it happened, he turned 18 that following May. And literally like the day after he turned 18, like he went and signed up. And, it's like I feel personally attacked almost, because it's like, these people have sacrificed their lives, sometimes limbs, their social lives, I mean, their families in order to serve this country. And then you've got these punks out here that are like making up these stories to like either get them a girl or try and pull like an emotional connection. Like I felt in this particular experience, it was almost like, did you find a bio on me to know that like my family was military and that, you know, I've got a like a soft spot for it or something? Because like that's how I felt. Like, yeah, I mean, he hit all the points. Oh well, you know, one of my guys in my unit died in my arms and I got injured and I was discharged. I wanted to be, he said he always wanted to be GI Joe, like from the time he was little, and maybe that is true. I do believe he was in the military. I think he got discharged because he went to prison. There was felonies, and I think he was on leave when it happened. I was trying to put the timeline together with it. I think he was home on leave when all of those felonies happened and went to prison. And of course, military is like, yeah, no, you getting discharged. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah, I felt attacked, or I felt, you know, I was just pissed. Like I was just I think that's the one thing I was mad about after that whole crazy story of all the things. That was the one thing that I was like, you
can say it. It's okay.
That's what I was gonna ask. Like if he actually knew if your family was former military, and if he kept doing it to a point where he think he could fool you, I think that would take a lot of balls. But it kind of does make sense. Maybe he was in and then did get just discharged, but I guess maybe he felt to a point that he knew a little bit of what he was talking about to get by, maybe. So I mean, that's another reason why he probably could have kept going with the whole story.
Yeah, like so one of my friends dated a guy, and he was Army, but he kept telling her he was Special Forces. And I was like, no, he's not. And she's like, well, how do you know? I was like, because of the base he's at. Like, there's no way he's Special Forces, and he's too old. Like, it was just, there were things that were like, not like, again, I know enough that like, you would have to know, not just your basic, like, oh yeah, so I was stationed at Fort Bragg. Well, everybody knows Fort Bragg is an Army base, but like, what was your specialty, or, you know, those kinds of things. So I know more than the average person, I guess, just because of, you know, my family and just experience with friends and stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if he did do the research, or if he just took a gamble on it, was like, or he's done this before with other girls. I'm not sure. I mean,
my girlfriend has even said a few things like, oh, my boyfriend's from the military. I'm like, oh, okay. What was his MOS? So I'll ask, and she'll come back, and she's like, well, what was his job? What was his MOS? It's like, oh, he was such and such, just like some random job. And I'm like, that's not what I asked. And she's like, what's his MOS? And like, go ask that. And she's like, all right. And she would come back to me. She's like, oh, she doesn't know his MOS. I'm like, how does he not know his MOS? It's a specific number and a letter of what your job description is. And sometimes it's usually the guy disappears all of a sudden or something like that, because all of a sudden now it's picking at what he actually does or whatever. So I find those stories kind of funny.
so can you explain? I mean, I'm sure because other people are going to ask, like, what exactly an MOS, like, what does that stand for?
Yeah, so MOS is a military occupational specialty. So it's, for Army, it's 2 numbers. It's the job description. So when I went in, I was a 21 Bravo. But it jumped back to 12 Bravo, 21 Bravo, because infantry is 11, and it's 11 Bravo. So since I was a combat engineer, I was a combat MOS. So I fall under that one in the beginning. So 12 it's combat, and then the Bravo, which is the B, which is engineer. So it's combat engineer. So it's a weird code that they do to keep every job in line. So I have a sub job. Marines, it's a little bit different. I think it's like four numbers. Air Force is different too, and I think Navy is as well. I'm not sure how they do theirs, but yeah, I even ask the same thing when I run into guys. They say, "Yeah, I'm former military." I say, "Well, what's your MOS?" And they'll tell me, he's like, I was infantry, or I was some kind of weird special job." And I'm like, well, that's not what I asked you. I want your number. And usually at that point, that's where I could kind of catch them, that they're going down a line that's not true.
So there's another good tip, is just start right out with that question and see what answer that you get.
Yeah.
Eric, I know that you mentioned, you said you have family who's military, and if you even, embellished or made something up, that they would probably kick your butt, as they should, but you would never do that. But what I want to ask is, so Nelson's father was a Marine. So he actually did serve, and he was definitely at least complicit in these stories that Nelson fabricated. What do you think about somebody that would do that, even though that's their kid? Like, where do we draw the line of protecting our children when they're becoming sociopathic liars about stolen valor?
Saying the relative went along with the lie.
Yep.
Oh, that's a little bit. I don't know what I can say about that. That's a little bit too much. I don't know why they would the parent even allow that to happen. That's kind of I don't know. That's more disrespectful on the parent to allow the child to do that. Yeah, I really have no words for that. That's kind of on a whole nother level.
I agree. Jenn, I know that you don't have kids, but I mean, how does that make you feel that a parent would go along with that, knowing that this individual, Nelson, is impacting other people's lives with this story?
I mean, I don't know, maybe that speaks to the parent, and maybe that's where they learned it from. It would be my opinion, but no, I mean, I don't know. I just, the whole, like someone told me yesterday, we were talking about this, and it was like, they're like con artists. Like, that's literally what you're doing. It's a con. Like, it's not, it's not even just like, hey, I just made up this story. It's like, no, like you're literally trying to con people into believing this about you. Like, whether it's you're trying to get your, I don't know, like your ego inflated, or you feel like, oh, well, maybe they'll like me more if they know that I, was this, army or, military hero. I don't know. But like, I think it's crap that a parent would, especially a parent would go along with it, especially a parent who is military. Like, maybe the parent did the same thing. Maybe, even though he was Marine, maybe he embellished or he made up more stories, war stories that he was in that he wasn't.
Interesting that you say that, because now that I'm thinking, because the parent is my sibling, so my former sibling, because I do not claim that person anymore, or that whole side of the family, but I have heard not necessarily military stories, but law enforcement stories that individual has fabricated, or at the very least embellished to the nth degree. So I think it's very interesting that you picked up on that. Wow. Eric, so Jenn and I were talking about how we feel like there's a website of stories because these were so similar. Does stuff like that actually exist? Do you know if there are places where people can go and like grab their fake military stories?
As someone trying to make up their stories, or oh
Or
yeah,
to like
I'm
get the
sure.
details, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like to have like the actual like
The details.
like
oh
the
yeah.
or
I
and
mean, each branch has their own website. You could read up on everything like that. I mean, Google's a thing now. You could Google anything right now and find out. But a lot of, I don't know. I think it's just how also soldiers talk to each other. That's another thing that you could kind of pick on. But I think that's mostly what soldiers could figure out. But yeah, it's just there's a lot of other details that we notice right away that other people could notice as well, especially about uniforms, especially when people come out and you see like people in their dress uniform,
Mm-hmm.
there's no reason for any military person to be in their dress uniform unless it's a special occasion of some kind. There's not one person in the military likes wearing that uniform. It's uncomfortable, it's hot. No. And just to wear it on just some regular day, no one's gonna ever do that. So that's always kind of like the first red flag that we kind of see. And then you could look at the uniform, and usually we could see things that are not right with the uniform that are big things. Um, just a whole list of other things as well.
I know that you have a uniform, at least one behind you. Is there anything on there that you can point out that people would be able to pretty quickly notice was not right or was off on somebody?
Yeah, so this is this uniform I don't even think is being used anymore. This was my dress uniform. Um, so where to start? The rank is always on the side. This is kind of hard to see because it's green on green. So the ranks on both sides. Uh, on the left side is your unit. So whatever unit you're a part of, you always have it on the left side. On the right side is your combat patch. Whatever unit that you ever deploy with has a patch. I mean, I could use this one, the big red one. I always wanted to be part of the big red one, so I wear this proudly. I could wear this patch on this side, but there's a story behind that that I don't want to wear that patch. But yeah, I don't think people realize how many how long it takes to put this together.
Mhm.
Everything that's on here has to be measured in the correct form.
Mhm.
So usually guys like spacing has to be like a quarter, like the width of a quarter or how thick it is. So
Mhm.
here, literally here,
Wow.
quarter everywhere to try to get it right. So it takes a while to just put this all together if you want to make it right. Um, a lot of times people will see is this. So maybe you'll see a lot of the big famous Stolen Valor ones show the ribbons.
Mhm.
I mean, I have 3 stacks, but you'll see some guys that have like this big.
Mhm.
There's no way anybody would have a stack this big unless you are been in the military for the last 30 something years, because there's ribbons that are even from Korea, Vietnam. um it's a whole other list that now soldiers wouldn't even be able to get to some of those ribbons because those wars are already passed. And it's just a lot of a lot of the funny ones are they have these ribbons, but then they also have the medal as well. You
Mhm.
never have the medal. There are uniforms that are like the dress blues that you actually have the medals. Um, but yeah, crossing uniforms are always a big thing. Um, and also another big thing is like if it's sloppy, if it doesn't
Mhm.
look straight or anything, then it's obviously someone that's really lazy or it's someone that's not really paying attention. Um, Another one that's big are on the sleeves. So on the left side, it's your services. Each one of these stripes means 3 years. I did 5 active duty, so I got shorted on one stripe for so on the other side is your combat stripes. So these are every 6 months. So yeah, I did 24. Well, actually, I did 27. So yeah, I got shorted 3 months on another stripe. So, but yeah, it's just like that is, um, you'll never see anybody out with that unless they're at a military ceremony, or sometimes you might see guys at a sporting event, they wear those uniforms. Other than that, no. Uh, the other are kind of like what your battle uniforms. So this uniform is no longer used. So the ACU now they have like like the jungle outfit now. So some people, the flag is always on the right side. I've actually seen some pictures where they have this flag here where your rank is supposed to be, or they might have their rank where these patches are supposed to be. You always have your unit patches on those sides. And also never there'll be any of those ribbons. Like the ribbons that are on the other uniform, you'll never have it on this uniform. Never. They should never be on anything like this. This might be a little bit of a stupid one. If the uniform looks brand spanking new, they were never in the military. It always has to be some kind of like fade because you wash these things. They tell you to get a clean uniform just so you could wear out, but they're so expensive that you're not going to waste a uniform just to have one as a clean one. And plus they're so cheaply made too that, I mean, you're not going to waste it. So you're going to use it. Just that's pretty much the gist of it. Oh, also another one is that if you're ever indoors and you see a military person wearing their cover or their hat, no, you never wear your cover, you never wear your hat indoors unless it is a ceremony. So you'll may see a lot of videos of guys at a mall and they're walking around and they're wearing their cover indoors. Yeah, that right away you should know that that person's not military. Even simple rules like that, you'll get chewed out by anybody if you ever have your cover on indoors.
Is that the same for females?
Yep, everybody. And if the rank is always on the front here. If that rank isn't on the hat or the cover, yeah, the uniform is wrong. And also the name, your name has to be on the back of your cover too. So the hat that's this color, the name has to be on the back. What was another one? Oh, another one is that the US Army or Marines or Navy or whatever, that name is always over your heart. So if they're switched around, that's no.
That is very interesting. I think I'm definitely going to be looking at uniforms in a much different way now, especially like with you said about the measurements and just everything being so precise. And then I know I have seen people with the ribbons and the medals. Like as soon as you said that, I know I've seen pictures of that right off the bat. So that seems like it might be a pretty easy one. And it also seems like that would be somebody who's probably trying to gain more attention because they're trying to put more colorful stuff on there to draw people in. Jenn, did your Nelson, did he have any paraphernalia or items supposedly from his military time?
Like I said, the medal or the awards and the medals that he had won. And then this was interesting. He had a sweatshirt, that said Army on it. And he said he got that when he was in basic training. And I was like, that thing's like 20 years old. That's in really good condition for being like that old. And he said, oh, well, I take care of the things that I care about. And I was like, okay. Because again, I didn't know him that well, but like, I'm thinking like, I take care of things decently, but like, I don't have anything from when I like 20 years ago that's still in my possession. First of all, it doesn't fit.
Was it the marshmallow outfit?
It was just like a gray hoodie that said Army.
Oh,
like,
okay.
That's it.
No,
that was all it was.
The marshmallow PT uniform is basically a white sweater that has Army on the front of it, and it's the matching pants that are white that has Army on the sides of it. So yeah, we call it the marshmallow outfit because you look like a giant marshmallow.
I mean, that makes sense.
I love it. I will say, Jenn, I do have some sweatshirts from when I was in the police academy, which was a long time ago. But I don't wear it all. You know what I mean? Like, it is packed away in a bag under the bed. So if I wore it all the time, it probably wouldn't look so spiffy and fresh and clean. Eric, what do you think about somebody who has, you know, for example, my Nelson, he would wear a hat with a patch, and he would actually switch out the patches. It was one of those, like, you know, where you have the Velcro patch. And one of them was allegedly his blood from when he was stabbed and shot. And then the other was the blood of his friend who had died in his arms. To me, it seems kind of weird that you would wear that around, like, proudly as a patch. But what do you think about that? Is that something that legitimately a veteran would do?
Yes and no. I know someone um who was shot and got medically discharged, and he turned the uniform that he wore into like a vest type deal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I would see that. I know when I talked about my incident at Christmas, um, one of the guys that was in the truck, guy took off his name tape,
Mm-hmm.
and it had his blood on it and everything like that. Um, I kept it, and I gave it to my lieutenant, and then I gave it to, or I gave it to my lieutenant, and the lieutenant gave it to his family. They keep it as a keepsake, like in the house, though.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't know. It really kind of depends. I mean, sometimes that might happen, but I don't know. Sometimes it might be a little bit extreme. It depends on the person. You really can't say yes or no on that. I understand it. I still kind of keep certain things that I wear that from the military. I have a skull cap that
Mm-hmm.
I had from the military. I keep that. Some of the winter gear that we had are some of the warmest, and I'm in Chicago, so it keeps me warm here. So I keep wearing that. But yeah, I mean, you really can't say yes or no on something like that.
No, that makes sense. Is there anything else you would say that would be kind of a dead giveaway, or at least like a really, really big red flag when those of us who weren't in the military, you know, hear some of these stories? So we know to ask about the MOS kind of right off the bat, but what else would be a big red flag or a way to kind of pick up on something that might not be true?
As far as the uniform, if they look way too young and have too much stuff on their uniform, yeah, it's a no.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is, it's a little bit of a joke, but I think I've only used this once, and it was on someone that I wasn't kind of quite sure on. I asked the question, "What makes the grass grow?" And the answer, sometimes I say, "Well, water, obviously." But no, it's a song. It's a not a song. It's a cadence that says
Mm-hmm.
what makes the grass grow, and you say blood, bright red blood. So it's a little bit of a joke, but
Mm-hmm.
it's another way of. I know that cadence is used in every single branch, so that's another way to pick up on if someone's kind of not telling the truth or not, because you'll always hear that cadence in basic training.
Interesting. So I actually knew the answer to that, but only because for some odd reason, that was our little like pre-race cheer in high school cross country. I don't know why.
That's a little weird.
It is a little weird. I will say, to make it, I don't know, more or less weird. So the school I went to, the initials of it are NCSSM, and everybody called it S&M.
Mm.
So, you know, yeah, little nod to the other S&M. So maybe that's why somebody thought it would be funny. I don't know. but I like it. Jenn, tell me what is going to happen next time that you run into one of these losers that is stealing Eric's story and using it for their own gain?
I mean, I think he's definitely given some good insight, like questions to ask, especially, again, I might know a little bit more than the average person. And definitely like the uniform stuff, like I didn't really know a lot about like exactly the precise measurements and like not wearing the medals on there. And I guess it's just asking the right questions, and really asking like, okay, so like when were you over there? What unit were you in? Like that stuff. I was just like, oh, I never wanted to pry because I'm like, they might have some, because that's what he kept telling me, is that he had really bad PTSD. And that was one of the things that he said, that he could never be a good liar because he didn't remember anything. I was like, and now I'm like, oh, that was just your excuse to like not remember conversations that we had, because it was probably your other girlfriend that you were talking about or talking to. So I think that some good insight on that for sure. And I don't know if we'll be always able to like pinpoint people like that, because there's my father was also a sociopath and lied about a lot of things too, and was very good at it. And they're very good at deflecting. So, I mean, I wish we didn't have to do this, but, again, just asking, I guess, the right questions. And I feel like Eric's definitely given us a good base to.
No, asking what unit you're from, you should know that right away. The whole PTSD thing doesn't really fall in that. It's not amnesia. It's,
you definitely made it sound like it was.
So the main things, ask what unit you were in, where were you stationed,
Like
your rank
too? Like knowing bases, like was that an Army base, is that a Marine base, is that an Air Force base, is that a naval base? I mean, I know that there's some, like where my brother was, that was a combined language school for all the branches, but maybe knowing that kind of stuff, I mean, or at least researching it once they've told you. I mean, I hate that sometimes we're all like, I don't want to lie, or I don't want to question what somebody tells me. But
I mean, it's just those are just like basic questions. If you really can't answer that, then there's really no reason to go any further. That they're not gonna, it's just a whole big lie. I mean, another thing that I always is to pick up on is, I know we talked about the we instead of the I, and then you made the joke in the beginning that you have to pry stuff out of me. So yeah, that is true. So a normal soldier won't say more than you ever ask. If they continue on something that you never even asked, then it's also kind of a red flag too, because I mean, I have family members too that are Chicago cops, and they always told me never answer more than what the question actually is. So that's another thing. I mean, I won't add, if you ask me the question, I'll answer it honestly, but I'm not going to kind of go any further or elaborate on my story to make me incriminate myself on anything, or I mean, there's probably more to the story, but I mean, it's just sometimes you just don't want to say because of just of that emotion and everything. And I had that for a long time. Now I'm more open of the fact that I could tell the whole story and not have a problem with it. Sometimes I still get emotional about it, but it doesn't affect me as much as I did in years past.
And I think that's a great point too, because Jenn, you mentioned your Nelson supposedly had PTSD, and, from what Eric just said about just being emotional and, not not saying too much. I think sometimes when we see these people who claim they have PTSD, but then will go into this ridiculous amount of detail on a horrific story or experience that they went through without any emotion, but more of like an excitement of, oh, this, seeing how people are reacting to this story that they're telling. That's probably a red flag that they're lying and they're a sociopath, because that's just not normal at all. Eric, any other last minute tips that you want to hand out so that the rest of us can beat down the stolen valor stories that we are hearing?
Not anymore for me. I know I showed you guys to look up the one woman that's going on right now. That's
Yes.
to a point where, wow, like, and I guess the update right now is she's actually stolen over $250,000 from all these charities. And to that point, right now, that's probably the worst stolen valor that's been out there right now. Um, I don't know, her name is drawing a blank. I mean, it's Sarah Kavanaugh, I think it is, or something like that.
Yes.
Didn't she have another name too?
And she has
though? Like,
another last
Yeah,
name. Or
yeah, it's this Buger, something
yeah.
like that is her real
Mhm.
name. But
Yeah.
yeah, and now I think now they're finding people that actually may have helped her get different documents too. So it might not be end right there.
Wow.
Because she literally, so you get your slip when you
Mhm.
get out, your DD 214.
Mhm.
That shows everything that you've ever done in the military. And apparently, I guess she used this DD 214 from a guy she worked with in the VA office. And I guess right now he's saying, no, I have no idea who she is, but, and I guess they're finding out that they work together. So it might be actually a little bit bigger than what it actually is going to go going on right now.
Wow. And I
Yeah.
think that's another great point, the DD 214, because when Nelson's wife at the time, after all this had come out, or she discovered he was lying, she actually found his DD 214, which he said had been, that along with all of his medals and uniforms, had been burned by his jealous ex-girlfriend. It showed his actual time of service he didn't even complete boot camp, which we knew. She didn't know, so that would have been helpful for her to have found that way sooner. But yeah, that story is crazy, Eric. And for those of you that don't know it, I'll try to remember to put a link on the screen right here to look up that person. But that's insane. And I mean, it's bad enough to prey on people to get attention or affection or whatever it is you're after, but to make up cancer and all kinds of stuff and then take people's money. I mean, that's a special place in hell, I feel like, for you. So we are gonna wrap up, but of course we can't wrap up without like a minute of tattoo talk. I mean, we have to. So Eric, I know that we talked about tattoos last time, and I'm going to try to remember. We kind of had some marine life stuff going on, right? Or you want to get some more of that. So, how are we feeling about that? Where are we at on a new tattoo?
The tattoos are getting expensive now.
I know.
So, I mean, I got the right side of my leg done. I wanted to get the left side. I was joking with my daughter the other day. I'm like, you might miss a semester of college. And she was like, she looked at me like, really? I was like, no, I'm just joking with you. So it's, but no, I don't know. My girlfriend's pushing me to get matching tattoos. I don't know about that, but we'll have to we'll have to see about that.
That is another episode.
Yeah, that is another episode, right? No, I don't. With my tattoos, I like to put a lot of thought into it because all my tattoos tell a story in my life. So it's not like I just randomly go to the shop and say I want to get this. I have to put a lot of thought in it.
So it's coming. It's coming though.
Yeah, it's coming.
If you and the girlfriend were gonna get matching tattoos, does she have an idea of what she wants, or
She was big in Harry Potter, so I'm kind of into it too. Um, so I don't know what we're gonna do. We're thinking about it. Something that means something.
okay. That's not crazy because I mean, if anything happened, you still have a cool Harry Potter tattoo potentially. So,
No, the conversation piece is always the one that's on my back. So it's a little funny because then someone will just because I have bomb hunter
mhm.
on my back, and so a lot of people come up to me and ask why do you have it. So it's always a conversation starter on it. So yeah, sometimes my girlfriend's like, "Oh, you met a new friend or something like that." like, oh, and it was mostly vets too.
Mhm.
Especially like I wear a lot of hoodies that have this the duty stations I was at. I have one because the base in Germany that um, I was at now it's completely uh, flattened out. It's no longer there.
Mm.
So I wear that one, and I have a lot of people come up to me in the store and ask me if I was stationed there. And some people say, "Yeah, I was stationed there. I was stationed at a base maybe an hour away." So having 20-minute conversations
Mhm.
today, and then my girlfriend too is like, "Oh, are we gonna shop or are we gonna have conversation in the store?" So it's like I don't know. It's just, I laugh it off. She laughs it off too. But it's a thing that I also like to do to help vets because brings back some of the stories and everything like that. A lot of them don't have
Mhm.
military friends close by. So just like 15 minutes, yeah, it's a big deal for us.
Exactly. You got to take that time to give them that ear, or, that moment to tell that story, like you said, that they might not be able to tell.
Mm.
Jen, I mean, we just recently talked about your tattoo. We have some color or shading left to do. Is that right? Am I making that up?
Yeah, no, we've got a little bit of, we're gonna add some blues to it. That's just he's super busy, and then I'm super busy with work and travel and stuff. But
I get it.
and then I've got my shield and my sword on my sides. So I don't know. I'm looking. I think I'm gonna get Tinkerbell on my foot too. So so I have a Tinkerbell tattoo already. It was a tramp stamp, and I loved it, but it was really small. And then some of the older tattoos they tend to bleed.
Mhm.
And the face, like you couldn't see any of the detail anymore on the face. And so we covered it with the lighthouse tattoo. So
Mhm.
I was like, all right, we're gonna have to put Tinkerbell somewhere else now. But now I'm not sure because of the whole like Disney thing.
Uh,
Like I was a Disney kid. I grew up, I
mhm.
loved Tinkerbell. So now I'm like, maybe I should do something else on the foot. But that was the thought process behind that one. So
So I would
Uh,
hold on the Disney tattoo.
yeah, we'll hold.
uh,
Well, and I'm like Eric, like I'm one of those ones, like I think about things like
Mhm.
Tinkerbell tattoo I had drawn for me when I was like 15 and didn't get it done until I was 19.
Mhm.
My shield and my sword tattoos, like I probably spent about 5 years thinking about each one of those. And this lighthouse one, I started thinking about it when my grandfather passed in 15.
Oh,
And I
wow.
just got it done in December. So like I think about and I want my stuff to like be meaningful to me.
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
so I'm with you on that one, Eric.
I came across a field artillery guy in Kuwait, and he had a tramp stamp, but it was actually a tramp stamp.
Oh my
So
god,
it
that's
said it
hilarious.
said it said tramp stamp on his lower back, and had the like someone put a stamp. It had the corners on it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was his whole lower back too. And I'm like, why? And I got really drunk, so I just did it.
Wow.
I'm like, wow, that took a lot of balls to do that.
Yeah.
So
I
And
mean,
I feel like that is the perfect place to end this conversation. So Eric and Jen, thank you guys so much for being here with me today. Jen, thank you again for sharing some of the story of the relationship that you went through. Eric, thank you for being our expert today and giving everybody some tips and tricks that they can look for to avoid stolen valor. I hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with Eric and Jen as much as I did. I truly appreciate Jenn sharing her story and Eric sharing all the tips that we can use if we suspect stolen valor. So remember, until next week, you are strong enough and you are worth it. Thank you for listening to the Strong Enough podcast. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform by searching Strong Enough. And on YouTube, we're on the Spear Talk channel. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Strong Enough Pod. If you have suggestions for an upcoming episode or a future guest, please reach out at strongenoughpod@gmail.com. Remember, you are worth it.